Hello there, fellow Voyagers. My name is Aaron Moss. With me is my wife, Michelle Moss. And this is VoyagersCast, a Headcast Network 20-episode maxi-series podcast where we look at the greatest time travel show of the early 80s, Voyagers. Joining us on this monthly expedition through time will be several of my podcasting friends and fellow Voyagers. Each month we look at an episode of Voyagers and give you our thoughts. So let's take a look and see where we're landing this time.
Kid, we did it.
And welcome to VoyagersCast, episode 20. Before I get started, I do want to say that this episode has been sponsored by Big Danny Cool, one of my Patreon sponsors. I just wanted to throw his name out there. Thank you very much, sir. But let's get started on today's episode. This is episode 20, which means we're talking about episode 20 of the TV show. I am your host, Aaron, Brotherhead Moss, and as always, joining me is my beautiful wife, the hostess with the mostest, Michelle.
Hello, hello, hello.
You look confused.
Patreon, does that mean they pay you to be?
Yeah.
How much does he pay you?
He just signed up for the $10 a month.
So you're getting $10 a month?
For this guy, yeah.
Dude, do you have any other Patreons?
I've got a couple one other guy's doing $2 a month. There's $1, Buddy Gene. My fellow podcasters.
Well, that's pretty cool. $10 a month.
Can't quit my job, but you know.
Pays for a bottle of vodka that you drink when
There you go.
you podcast.
Damn straight. But anyway, we're not here talking about alcohol addiction. We're here to talk about episode 20 of Voyagers. This month, we're looking at the episode entitled Jack's Back. This first aired July the 10th of 1983. And yes, sadly, this was the final episode of the series. As we've talked about previously, the final episode was originally going to be episode 13, the Trial of Phineas Bog. But from what I've heard, John Eric Hexam helped pay for these final episodes just to get a full 20 episodes out. So we got 20 episodes of Voyagers.
So normally Aaron reads from Wikipedia. However, on IMDb, there was a really cool review written by someone by the name of Renegade Voyager. And I thought I'd just kind of give it a spin. Sadly, my reading fluency isn't as smooth as Brotherhead's over there, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. So Renegade Voyager, if you're out there listening, which I really doubt it, but hey, it's worth a shot. Here is your version of what happened in the episode Jack's Back. In sadly, this final episode of Voyagers, Phineas Bogg meets an old rival from a previous episode. They've traveled back to London in 1889, where Bogg and Geoffrey meet up with both crusading reporter Nelly Bly and Arthur Conan Doyle. Michael Ensign as Doyle is a whole lot like his famous literary creation Sherlock Holmes, and guess what? He lives at 22 1B Baker Street. He's having a temporary writer's block, however, which Mino Peluce tries to help him with. But Julia Duffy as Nellie Bly is after a real story, the apprehension of the Whitechapel killer of prostitutes, Jack the Ripper. Who does it turn out to be? None other than Drake, the man who tried to have John Eric Hexam's Voyager credentials canceled. He's got his Omni, and he's determined to mess up the history as Bogg and Geoffrey are to write it. He might have made an interesting villain foil had the series continued.
And that's the synopsis. So, Michelle, this is your first time. Actually, I think we watched it once before.
Yeah, I remembered watching it after we watched it.
Okay, so I don't know if you remember that or not because of your
I remember
scroll brain,
parts of it.
I'm sorry, your Swiss cheese memory. But
my Swiss cheese memory, my Dory brain, whatever. Thanks, Hayden.
But yeah, we did watch this. I've watched this a couple of times.
Uh-huh.
So let's get some thoughts from you.
I think I'm jaded because I know it's the end of it. And so I'm kind of pissy about the whole situation.
Possibly because you're complaining about things that I think was unfair because you're criticizing like the wardrobe and stuff.
Well,
and
okay, so
it's always been a little
But for
spotty.
some reason, maybe it's because I am pissed off that it's ending. So I'm really nitpicking it because I'm mad at whoever. But in the long scheme of things, it probably would have been canceled anyways because of what happened. Though if they were still filming, would he have shot himself?
No.
Because he wouldn't have had that opportunity because he would have been working on a different set.
Much like Brandon Lee, who accidentally killed himself during The Crow. John Exum killed himself during, if I'm not mistaken, accidentally shot himself.
Right.
During filming Cover
Something.
So yeah, so if, I want to say NBC and their stupidity hadn't canceled the show for...
So NBC killed him.
Yes. It's NBC's fault.
Bastards. I am writing a letter to them telling them that they killed John Hexum.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
Though I wonder what the ratings were like. I mean, at this point.
I don't know. I couldn't find a good
because he had to pay for... John Hexum paid for how many episodes?
From what I understand, he paid for the last 6.
And I wonder how much each episode cost to...
Last 7 episodes, what I'm understanding. Or
I wonder how much each episode was. Because if he paid for all of that... I
don't know if he paid for the whole thing or if he helped pay for it. I'm not quite sure.
Because that's a lot of money out of one's pocket. That means he had to have been loaded.
So I don't know. Because he doesn't have a huge catalog.
Right. So before we get into all of that, let's go back to the show.
So real quick, I've talked about, this is the final episode.
Right.
The final episode of the series. Mm-hmm. The show is called Cover Up is what he went to. 7 episodes. And he's had, just looking real quick, we can talk a little more about John.
Did he have a modeling career?
As far as credits for acting, he had 8 shows. This was actually his 3rd show. Well, I guess the other ones came out, or 4th. Okay, I see what they did. And we're going to probably talk about this next month. They took a couple episodes and combined them into a TV movie called Voyager of the Unknown. That's listed on here also prior to Voyagers. But yeah, he was in an uncredited theater audience. Actually, this is, as I'm talking out loud, this is his first credited appearance. He was in Death Trap as a theater audience, uncredited, in 1982. A Little Sex as a game audience, uncredited.
What does it mean by uncredited? I mean, he didn't have credits.
Yeah, and when you watch the credits, he didn't have his name in it.
Oh, wow. So he was really a nobody.
He was just a bit part.
Like walking down the street kind of thing.
And then he had Voyagers, was his first credit in 1982 through 1983. Also released in 1983 was Making of a Model, a TV movie. Hotel, it was a TV series. It was 1 episode in 1984. And The Bear was, I guess, a movie of some sort, came out in 1984. And then Cover Up came out in 1984, which was 7 episodes. And that was
so he had a very short acting career.
Yes. Yeah, no, this was his first credited appearance.
Wow.
He was born in 1957, so he was like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
When he did the show.
He's like 2 years
25?
older than, he would have been 2 years older than my mom, had he still lived.
And he died October 18th, 1984.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this may be of interest to you, since we're talking about John. He carried a California organ donor's card.
Yeah.
So when he died, at least 5 people received transplants of his viable organs, including his heart.
Wow. Now that's awesome. Special. That's very near and dear to my own heart because my first husband was an organ donor. And if you haven't decided to do it, I'm going to open this up really quick. They do not hound you. It's not like they're waiting at your door. It's a very intimate process, and it really helped me with some closure. And it wasn't a hard decision because we had actually talked about it right before he died, which was really weird, like 2 weeks before. But it was a good thing, and helping other people's with something that you're not going to be using anymore. I mean, you donate clothes and everything else, so. What's the difference, right? If you're not going to use it, let someone else use it. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, if I had anything left when I'm dead, I wouldn't mind donating it, but I'm using everything I've got it.
I was going to say you could donate your eyes, but I don't think they'd even want those.
No, my eyes are bad. I'm sure my liver's going bad. I don't have much that's really much of use to anybody, so I'm taking it with me, damn it.
But yeah, no. If you haven't done it and you can go do it, I highly recommend it. It's a very selfless thing that anybody could do. But on the
Back to
conversation about Voyagers and this episode. I really did pick it.
She did.
At first, it's funny because there's episodes that I think about that I really, really enjoyed, and they made me excited to watch the show. And to me, as the show progressed, I kind of lost some interest in it. And I'm wondering if it's because we took so long to watch it, which
delays.
I'm actually going to be tested for ADHD. I just talked to my psychiatrist about it. However, I feel like it just kind of progressively got worse with the stories, because I don't feel like it was as historical, as many historical figures that...
Let me interrupt you real quick. As we talked about previously, once they had John started paying for everything, they didn't have as many... Again, they were trying to go for an older audience.
Right.
And they didn't have as many leaps, if you will.
Right.
In fact, this episode, this was the only time period they leapt into.
Right.
So that may be part of the problem, is they didn't have, because they still had.
But I always got excited when I was like, oh, there's George Washington. There's, Abraham Lincoln. There's, Cleopatra.
Maybe it's just where they leapt into, you weren't as interested.
Babe Ruth. Well, I hated the Babe Ruth one, but Babe Ruth and, Tesla and Franklin and I liked that they threw a lot of the historical
and they didn't
figures
stop doing that. I mean, after episode 13, the Trial of Phineas, they had MacArthur at Pearl Harbor and Bill Cody at the Pony Express, Voyagers of the Titanic, which had to rescue the Mona Lisa from the Titanic.
Which I didn't, and I'm a huge Titanic fan. Like, I like history. It's funny. The show has made me realize, though, how much of a history buff I am. Because if you would have asked me, prior to this, how much do you really like history? I would have been like, nah. But then again, when I talk to my daughter and we're talking about presidents, and I know all these random facts about different presidents, she's like, how do you know all this? Like, I don't know. I can't even remember like a TV show, but I can throw you some random facts about some presidents, like gangbusters, which is kind of funny because I don't even follow politics.
But yeah, even the later episodes, they all had historical stuff.
But maybe it's just because I wasn't interested in those. But see, I liked the idea of Jack the Ripper. I think it's really cool.
Like Jack the Ripper, you like the Titanic, as you said.
Yeah, but maybe it's just the way they delivered it.
Maybe
it's a story that went with it, not necessarily.
Joe Louis, and then
I think
the aircraft, the plane that was hijacked. I could see that one. And then, Dwight D. Eisenhower's mom going into labor, and so they had to go back and make sure Alexander Graham Bell.
Yeah, I think it was the delivery of the story that bothered me. Like, I think they need new writers. I don't know.
So I've liked them all to one extent or the other, but then again,
I didn't hate them.
Well, no, I bet you didn't like some of them,
right?
I've liked them all to one extent or the other, but then again, as we've talked about previously, when I like a show, I tend to
very much fanscape it. Yes, so, you will give it all of the benefits of the doubt.
And like I say, this one here is one that I remember fondly.
This one?
Yeah, Jack's back.
Why?
Dylan, Jack the Ripper, Phineas, Drake is back.
Yeah.
Just all that to me was
the dun 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 episode.
Dun dun.
If you guys have not watched Resident Alien yet, give it a shot. That's a great show. We should do a podcast on that.
I told you one of these days.
Right. I'm not doing it by myself. No.
I haven't read all of Sherlock Holmes. I like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, you do like the books aspect of it. Yeah, I could see that.
And a shout out real quick to my buddy Jared.
Yeah.
Who has a podcast on Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, we should have invited him into this one.
But yeah, he's
in
bed. He's back east, and
yeah, but it's a Friday night. He could have suffered. We could have started a little bit earlier, but we could have just put Grayson on Minecraft, and he would have been happy with that. But no, I see. Here's the problem I had with it. I didn't like the leading lady. The only thing I liked about her is I thought she has the most perfect nose on a human being.
I like Julia Duffy, but
her voice.
I've only seen her
like nails on a chalkboard.
I can recall offhand, and she always comes across as bitchy.
Yes, and she's not. She wasn't believable in this. If she was trying to be the strong. If she was trying to be the Lois Lane in this, she wasn't very Lois Laney to me, because she didn't act like a strong reporter type woman. She just felt like a bitch. That is what it was. And when I see her in Newhart, and
Right.
I can't, because I was like, was she the one from, at first I was like, I think she's from Different Strokes. No, it's not her, because that girl had freckles. But then I was like, oh wait, I know who she is. I couldn't tell you the show until you had mentioned what the show was. But I was like, oh yeah, I remember that show. But I didn't care for her. And I was trying to get over the fact that it was her, because I was like, ooh, I like her jacket. I like that she had long blonde hair, because I have like a thing for long blonde hair.
Right.
And then the hair bow, I liked the hair bow. Like, I liked her costume, but I felt like the supporting cast, especially like in the bar,
Right.
those people reminded me of what a high school production of something would have looked like. Like the costuming. That's what bothered me.
See, and I think the costuming's been about the same throughout the entire thing. I don't notice a big difference.
I don't know.
But maybe it's just me.
Maybe it's because I was actually checking out the costuming.
Maybe.
But see, no, because like the blonde girl that's the other in the courtroom, the really, really pretty one,
the Flash
who I
reports.
wish was in every episode because she's absolutely beautiful. I would love to have seen more of her.
Me too.
I'm
sorry,
sure.
that's another
Yeah,
story
you
entirely.
want to see more of her. I just want to see her act. But
I want to see her. Never mind.
yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that was actually from the flashback of the Trial of Phineas Bogg, who she was played by, I'm pausing as I look. Oh, Julie Newman.
That was
the
Julie
actress.
Newman?
That was Julie Newman.
Julie Newman.
You act like you know her from somewhere.
I thought that
Oh.
name sounds familiar.
I know her from V.
Oh,
Yeah, she hasn't acted since 1986.
okay.
But she was in V and V: The Final Battle as one of the aliens named Barbara, which was the
I
hot
just
one
think
that,
she was so pretty.
who unrobed in front of Mark Singer to give him his costume or something like that.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of things since before that. Well, not a lot of things.
A handful of things. Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, which I watched.
BJ and the Bear. Charlie's Angels.
Nothing better than a show about a man and his monkey.
Yep. Fantasy Island. The plane.
Yep. She was an episode of the A-Team.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she was in a few things back in the day.
I like how.
But anyways,
sorry.
she was only in this in a flashback.
But it's funny because IMDb has her listed for only one episode of the Voyagers. And was that because they cut out the clip from the original and
because
just
she
threw
didn't
it in
actually
there?
appear in quotes in this episode.
Okay.
It was all flashbacks. It was just scenes. It was the same scenes that she appeared in previously, so they didn't give her credit for it.
Okay, so I'm on the fence with this, and hear me out. Normally, I love, with a capital L, when they take something from an episode from a while back that you haven't seen in a while, and then they twist it to bring it back into a new episode. I love that. I am not the continuity girl that likes this thing, like it every episode to lead into the next episode. But when you dip into an older episode and bring it back in, absolutely love it. But for some reason, I didn't care for that this much. And I think it's mostly because I feel like I knew that it was ending, so it didn't matter to me. And maybe that's a lot of what
Possibly,
I'm feeling.
'cause
Had you not told me, hey, this is the last episode, you're not going to get any more, maybe I wouldn't be so like nitpicky about everything, because
Right.
I'm
the synopsis you found read off, Drake would have been a good recurring villain.
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was really cool when she's like, I saw the Omni and it was a silver Omni and it was the V, and it had all the potential of being really cool. It's kind of like the Evil Leaper kind of thing coming back. But I don't know. I guess what it comes down to is that I'm just very jaded that it's over.
And this is something that I complained about, in quotes, from the beginning, is that they needed something to explain why history is messed up.
Yeah.
Because Jeffrey came from the future and he knew all this. So what happened to make it so things changed? They needed to have an explanation. Either there was some sort of cosmic accident that caused time to fracture, or Drake was going through time messing things up.
Yeah, I like that. I liked that. And I like that. But the thing is, though, was Drake messing things up to mess things up, or was Drake just doing it to get back at Bog? And if that's the case, then why are there other Voyagers fixing history? So it wasn't that...
Drake didn't start messing things up until after episode 13.
Right.
When he left away. And they said this episode that he's leaping through time, messing things up, just to mess up history.
Not... So... Was it that maybe the council didn't know that it was... I mean, I guess they really didn't know because they didn't know, did they?
Know what?
That it was Drake that's been messing up
prior to episode 13, Drake wasn't doing anything. And that's what I said. That's one thing I think the earlier episodes was missing was an explanation for why time's messed up. Episode 13,
because
Trial of Phineas Bog, Drake leapt away.
No, I get that. But what I'm asking you is this, though. I get that you're saying that he would have been a great way to kind of...
Right, explain everything.
But I don't think that necessarily would have worked because Drake and Bog were in class together learning how...
They would have had to done this prior. And maybe it wasn't Drake in general. They needed something like Drake.
Like...
They needed a group of evil leapers.
Okay, I will give you that, yeah. And Drake was part of the...
Or he joined them.
The anti-Justice League. What do you call it? The Doom... What is it? I'm drawing a blank.
I'm laughing here. The Legion of Doom.
I knew it was Doom and Legion. Hey, you got to give me some points there.
Yes,
that was pretty.
Yes, he could have joined the Legion of Doom.
And they could have just been... I think,
in fact, if they ever redo Voyagers, NBC Universal, hint, hint.
Yeah, they can just cancel it
James
like
Patriot.
They did our podcast. I mean, not our podcast. Like they canceled our Quantum Leap.
But yeah, if they were due, that would be a good way to explain why time is fractured. But this is the only evidence we have of Drake messing with time.
Right.
And again, they could have used him in the future if they would have kept the show going. But since this was it, this was the only instance we have of Drake actually messing with time.
So I'm wondering what their thought process was for was that their way of tying everything up into like a little bow? Because that they knew it was coming to an end?
I don't know if they were hoping to get it like a surprise. Hey, we decided let's go and continue on. Because it seemed like they were going to tie everything up. They would have had him capture Drake.
Not necessarily.
Or had him kill it off or something.
Look at all the books and stuff and movies that are left on a freaking cliffhanger. And you know how much I love cliffhangers.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I hate them.
I would love to talk to... In fact, I've been trying to talk to James Patriot. He was on a Voyagers Facebook group that I'm on. But I've had a chance. I haven't gotten him nailed down to talk to him.
I think we need to make that our mission.
But I've been trying on and off to try to get him to talk with him. I'm curious his intentions with this ending. Because, I would think, especially back in 1983, they would have, if they knew it was ending, they would have ended it. But they left it open for the future. So I don't know if maybe they was hoping to pick it back. I know, like, for instance, you mentioned Quantum Leap earlier.
Right.
I know after Quantum Leap ended for years, Don and Deborah were trying to get either a continuation series or at least a TV movie or something finishing off Sam's Leaps or something. And it just never happened until recently. And then it didn't finish off Sam's Leaps. But
yep, they didn't even touch Sam.
But so I don't know if he left it open for the possibility of that or what his reasoning was for leaving it open like that.
Right.
But yeah, it does end with Drake leaping off into the unknown.
Into the sunset.
And then Jeffrey and Phineas leaping out.
Right.
And I do like that they do mention Around the World in 80 Days and how Phineas had met the writer of that, Jules Vernon. And that, because again, Phineas Bog is in relation to Phineas Fogg, the main character from Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't realize that?
No,
Yeah.
I thought that was weird.
Yeah, no, Jules Verne, I'm sure you've heard about.
Yeah.
You've seen Back to the Future 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jules Verne wrote Around the World in 80 Days about a character named Phineas Fogg that traveled around the world in 80 days.
Oh, wow.
And that was the premise in here of Nelly Bly. She was trying to beat that time. Even though it was a fictional story, she was still trying to beat that 80-day thing that Phineas Fogg did. And that's who Phineas Bog...
No relation.
Phineas, I think that's who James Patriot named Phineas Bog after. And in this episode, we find out that apparently Phineas had met Jules, and so maybe that's where Phineas Fogg his name came from.
No, it's a nice little twist. I like
The
that.
Voyagers universe, at least. So I did like that.
I wonder if the writer was high and he was like, you know, it would be really great if, you know, like this guy met this guy, but really like he named, I could just see that. That'd be, you know, it was the 80s.
Mr. Patriot, that is my wife saying that, not myself.
No, I'm serious. Like, I want to know. Were
I'm
you
not accusing
high?
you of being high.
I didn't.
I would not do that.
I was asking.
You're not Sid and Marty Croft. But
No, I'm just curious. You know, it was the 80s. I could have said, you know, were you on cocaine? But I'm not going to ask that because.
I think it was before cocaine became really a thing. This was the early 80s.
So it was the 70s, so we were back to pot. But no, what about you? So I know you said that you enjoyed the episode. What about it that you enjoyed? What about it did you enjoy?
Honestly, almost everything. I wasn't a fan of Julia Duffy.
Julia
Julia. There was a manager at work named Julia. I forget her last name. Whenever I mention her name, I do that. Julia Gulia.
I bet you she hates that.
But Julia, she's a beautiful woman, but she's got a resting bitch face, in my opinion.
Even her tone is
her voice is just
nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't care for her.
Yeah.
But the rest of the episode I enjoyed. I enjoyed Arthur Conan Doyle because, again, I was a fan of Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
I enjoyed seeing Stephen Liska, who played Drake. I enjoyed seeing him return.
The guy who played Sir Conan Doyle, whatever.
Sir Conan Doyle, Michael Ensign. Yeah, I thought he did a good job as Doyle.
You know, it's funny because I was like, wow, they got some really, like, big name actors. But I'm like, wait a minute. They probably weren't such big name actors when they did the show.
Oh, and there was in this episode, there wasn't really big name actors. I mean, Julia Duffy, for instance, again, she's most famous, I think, for Newhart.
Which was probably way after.
Just looking on IMDb real quick as we're talking to see where this falls in the line of her acting career. Well, actually, she started acting. She was on Love of Life, a TV series. That series ran from 1951 through 1980. She was in a TV show. Yeah, she actually did quite a bit. She was in a TV series called The Doctors. It was from 1973 through 1977. She was in 463 episodes of that. Episode 8 is Enough. Yeah, she was in a dozen shows or so before this. Cheers, Simon and Simon. She was in an episode, a series called Wizards and Warriors, which I want to say I remember, which came out around the same time. So yeah, she's done a lot of things. And she was in a bunch of things before this. So she was an actress. So she was probably the biggest name, I'm saying. The other big one would probably be Michael Ensign, who played Doyle. And again, I love IMDb because it gives you information. Looking at IMDb, actually, he was probably the second biggest. He was the other big name because he's been acting since 1963. A bunch of bits, parts here and there. He was an episode of Greatest American Hero, MASH, a bunch of other things I haven't seen. Pink Floyd The Wall.
She was in that?
No, he was.
Oh.
The guy that played Doyle.
Yeah?
He was in that.
That's cool.
Yeah, he was in War Games. Oh, great movie. So he was in like 2 dozen shows or movies before this. So yeah, those two are the biggest names in here. And yeah, I know you first, and so did I, thought Michael Ensign was maybe the guy from Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yeah, that's what he kind of reminded me of.
But I got to look, it wasn't a different guy. The guy that was in Bedknobs and Broomsticks was much older. But so it wasn't a whole lot of big names in that besides those two in this episode.
You know how we were saying that like Mino Pelusi hasn't been acting since like the 80s? But apparently he was in something in 2001.
Alex in Wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing he said last thing was 1985. He was in a TV show, one episode called Helltown. He appeared in an episode of Punky Brewster, Detective in the House. Yeah, he was in Alex in Wonder, which apparently is also called Sex and a Girl. I'm just looking real quick. Oh, and Punky Brewster was in that also.
Oh.
Celine Moon Frye. She was in that. So whenever it was a package deal.
Maybe one of them wrote it. Who knows?
IMDb knows.
What year? How old was he? What year was he born?
He was around the same time age I am. Whoops. Just looking real quick.
Because his first episode he ever did was Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch.
In 1977.
Yeah, he was born February 26, 1970. He was born 2 months after I was.
So he's old. Just kidding.
So he's old. So he was about 12 when he did this show. And that's what you were asking earlier because you thought you saw a little peach fuzz for his mustache. And
I was like, it kind of looks like he's hitting a little bit of puberty in this last episode.
He would have been 12 or 13 when that episode.
So, going back to the episode itself, when Sir Conan Doyle or whatever, Arthur Conan Doyle or...
Arthur Conan Doyle.
Whatever, Arthur... I'm going to just call him Sherlock because that's easier for you to say. So, Sherlock. When Sherlock is looking at the dirt through the microscope and he's like, oh yeah, I could tell that this dirt came from your shoes and blah, blah, blah. And they kind of like pan out and they show Jeffrey...
Right.
I wanted to say Joffrey, that's why I had to stop myself. Jeffrey, they show Jeffrey like his whole body or whatever, and they show him wearing like Nikes.
Right.
It absolutely drives me insane that these characters do not comment on the wacko clothes. Did he?
And
Did I miss it?
I mentioned that to you.
In this episode.
Yes. When they were talking before that, Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle, made a comment.
Conan Doyle.
When he was looking, he made a comment of something along the lines of about Jeffrey's strange shoes.
Okay,
and that's why I looked over at you and I told you, see, they finally mentioned about their clothing. Because that's what we've talked about previously, is they all these ancient times, and Jeffrey shows up in blue jeans and a t-shirt.
Red and white, very loud t-shirt. Not even like just a subdued white t-shirt. It's like...
And we commented before that, it's odd that no one's commented on this. I thought that was funny. Yeah, that Doyle actually did mention that we need to talk about your strange shoes.
Okay, so then I'll give that to him, especially because it came from Sherlock. Mm-hmm. So that's very fitting.
Or Arthur Conan Doyle.
I can't say it. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I cannot... like I literally
I should take a picture of your face as you're trying to move a little clip of your face. You do Arthur Conan Doyle.
It's like mashed potatoes.
Anyway, Sherlock,
yes. So I guess I missed that little bit, but I'm glad that you pointed it out. And it being Sherlock is very fitting. So bravo, Sherlock. I'm proud of you for finally mentioning that. And then I thought to myself, wow, Jeffrey's shirt is kind of looking like it's starting to get really small. I don't know if you noticed, but I think it's just because he was probably more like the Teen Bop magazine kind of kid at that point. So to make him appeal to the girlies.
The first episode and see if it was as quite as, because again, it was real time. It was almost a year.
Right. Well,
so he's in that 12, 13 stage when boys grow. So
he grew.
I wonder if we might go to the first episode, if it was quite as size as you seeing it, or, or form fitting.
It seemed to be a little more form fitting.
If he's growing into it, which makes sense that he's growing, because it's been a year for us. Who knows how long it's been for him, maybe through time. So again, he is aging and he is getting bigger. And that's one thing that I think would probably be better. I'm saying this slowly, not because I'm slow, but because I'm trying to think of it as I say it. But I wonder if it would be better if they, again, NBC Universal, listen to me. If they were to redo this show, if they would have maybe the Omni give them clothes or make them, at least the clothes look like period appropriate.
Yeah.
That way they would fit in more instead of, because again, otherwise, like we've talked about before, it seems odd that it's been 20 episodes and no one's really mentioned much about their clothing being odd.
Did you notice that, Boggs' shirt had holes on the shoulders?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a neat little touch, too.
Again,
like there was some wear and tear.
I haven't noticed that. I don't know when that first appeared, but I did notice this episode, his shirt looked, especially when they were putting him in the back of the paddy wagon, I noticed that his shirt was a little beat up.
Because if you look at like some of the original, like the first couple episodes,
right,
you actually see that they do make an effort to change clothing, to blend in.
On and off.
Yeah, but for some of them they do.
Right.
I feel like that was a lost. I would have liked to have seen that more because that's part of history that I enjoy is seeing the fashion.
Yeah.
I think to me that's kind of lazy. That was a lazy. I know it was probably because of budget.
Right.
But if a high school production can get...
I'm going to have to rewatch this because I don't remember them changing very often. Occasionally they did.
Oh, well, they did. I'm looking here. Here's
I know there
picture.
was sometimes, but there was quite a bit they didn't because we mentioned... Yeah, that was like one of the first couple episodes, yeah.
Yeah, that was for the Wright brothers. Yeah, there was a few.
Of course, again, the Wright brothers, they're around for a few days. I think when they're in a period longer, they may try to fit in a little bit better if they have the time and the availability to get clothing. But we've commented before they've had a change of clothing, and we wonder, well, did the Omni create that for them, or where that came from? Because we've commented on that before. I remember.
Well, I think they bought some clothing too.
But there were times that they either changed back into their own clothing, or they showed up in clothing. We're like, where'd that come from? Did the Omni? Because I remember with that conversation. Because I remember this tangent I had that would be cool if the Omni did give them period clothing. Yeah. So.
Like the Cleopatra one, of course, where, John's not with any shirt.
And, it's this time a little bit at the very end, but there wasn't really so much of a love interest with him and Nelly Bly.
Well, I mean, who'd want to?
And I don't know if, again, I'm ignoring that, but I don't know if, because again, at the very end, she kind of seemed to be flirty with him a little bit, but I don't know how much of that was.
Like, let me give you a kiss on the cheek.
Was just trying to get a story from him.
I think it was. I think it was her trying to use her woman wiles.
Which, again, is a nice change from women throwing themselves at Bog.
Yeah, but at the same time, that annoyed the crap out of me, too.
See, I could see a reporter like that not throwing herself, but kind of flirting a little bit to try to get what she wants, because that's who she is.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
But again, like I say, while Julie Duffy is an attractive woman, something about her annoys me. It annoyed me here, annoyed me in Newhart, that Wizards.
She's just kind of got like a whiny disposition, is what it is.
And I know I've seen her in other things, but yeah, usually the things I remember her in, she's very whiny and very annoying. No offense if Miss Duffy's listening to this.
Yeah.
I doubt it, but.
Yeah, we're safe. But then again, I didn't put two and two together when we were talking to Deborah Pratt. So.
And some notes real quick from IMDb. This is the only episode to take place entirely in one time period.
And also, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was from Scotland, and he had an English accent.
Yeah, I mentioned this. Last time we watched this, I mentioned that to you, that, he was actually from Scotland, and he had an English accent here. This episode took place in London, England, UK on November 19th, 1889. This was the last episode of the series. As I mentioned earlier, Phineas learns that Jules Verne character Phineas Fogg in Around the World in 80 Days was possibly named after him, since Phineas says he met Jules Verne in person. 2021 Baker Street was Sherlock's address in the stories, but apparently that address never existed in Conan Doyle's lifetime. Baker Street didn't go up that far. When the street did go that far, 2021 would have been in the middle of a very large office complex. So even though in this episode he was at 21 Baker Street, it didn't actually exist at that time. And there's a comment here about Nelly entering the pub and asking for a bobby. For those who don't know, bobby is basically another word for a cop in London at the time. But it was in the Goofs for IMDb. It says, although Arthur Conan Doyle is depicted as having an English accent, he was in fact Scottish.
You just said that.
Yep, I was repeating it. And apparently Nelly Bly here claimed that Jack the Ripper had killed 6 women. In reality, he only killed 5 women between the 31st of August and the 9th of November, 1888. So, anyways, I'm just talking about IMDb stuff at this point. Is there any other thoughts that you have on Jack's back?
I'm trying to think. No, I'm just...
Besides being sad that it's over.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken us a while to get through them, but kind of disappointed.
And we'll talk more. So real quick.
Yeah.
So you might think that this is episode 20. This is the last episode of the series. This is the last episode of the show. I've actually got 1 or 2 more episodes planned. I haven't quite decided how many. Like I talked about previously, there was a TV movie where they took a couple episodes and they kind of tied them together. They created an opening narration for it and had some Voyagers council or something talking about and giving a little bit more. It came out after this, and it was called Voyagers from the Unknown. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that. And then either during that episode or maybe a final episode, just overall thoughts on the series. So,
you're not going to get much on overall thoughts of the entire series because I don't remember 90% of it.
I want to see if I can get Lee back on, maybe to plan this out. Normally, just for listeners out there, normally 8, 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, hey, Michelle, we want to do an episode of Voyagers? And so I don't have time to get anyone else. That's why we haven't had anyone on the show in a while, because we don't really plan this out very much. It's just like, hey, we got a few minutes. Let's go and record some Voyagers. But I'd like to plan maybe do one final episode doing Voyagers for them known and getting final thoughts. See if we get Lee on at that time and do one final episode. So just having said that, your thoughts on this episode?
Like I said, I'm kind of blah. It was okay. It didn't make me excited for any of the facts. I think, thinking back, like, I would have liked to have had more mystery. Like, you know what really annoyed me was at the end when she's hiding behind the barrel and they're like doing their little scuffle. Right. And I made the joke about Bog leaping through the air and like, oh, he probably had like a trampoline or whatever shooting. Right. But when she was behind there, it was like a high school production because she had no responses. She was just kind of peeking. And, you know, if there was a real person, they would have been like, watch out. Yeah. Or it was very... And then, like, when they were running through, like, the city, you could see that they're running and their mouths aren't moving, but yet they've got dubbed voices. And so it felt very, like, Japanese, like, subtitle-y kind of thing. So there are things like that where I feel like they really dropped the ball. Right. So I'm wondering if they knew it was over and they're like, just get it out and be done. Maybe. And, you know, it was very sloppy.
Well,
that's a good...
Your complaint about her not having any comments or any reaction to them fighting in the alley, that was one of my major complaints about the Spawn movie from back in the late 80s. Yeah. There was a scene where a demon pops out of the fireplace to fight Spawn, and his wife's there. And she's like, it's Monday. She doesn't have any real reaction.
Yeah, that's what this felt like.
Yeah. And that was one of my major complaints about the Spawn movie is that, that scene there...
Maybe
the actress didn't have any reaction. So that's I see where you're coming from.
Maybe that's what it is about her. It's not necessarily that she's like resting bitch face. It's just she's not reactive to her in the way she acts.
She doesn't have a lot of response to her environment.
It's not very. She's not very believable. It's very much watch out, Timmy. Don't fall into that rock.
Like,
you know,
my buddy Dean always says, just like 6th grade. Play.
Yes.
We will help you, Snow White.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's, and I think that might be where we're feeling it is that.
Maybe, yeah. She's got, And I've made that same complaint with other actors in the past that a lot of times there's some actors I don't like James Franco, for instance. And there's been a couple of others that don't have a great acting range, and they have the same look all the time or the same, like one of my complaints about Jimmy Fallon. I don't like him because he's always
goofy.
No, I don't mind goofy because Jimmy Kimmel's goofy.
I always get those two mixed up.
Jimmy Fallon, to me, he always looks like he's surprised he's in a project.
Jimmy Fallon...
He's the one you like. He's the one that does.
I love Fallon. He's the one who does all the music.
Shows.
Yeah,
yes.
I love that quirkiness about him. To me, he's just like joyful. He's so joyful.
And I've seen other actors or performers that have that joyfulness that I like. Jimmy Fallon annoys me because it comes across as...
I feel like he's like, I can't believe I'm in this.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
that annoys me.
Oh no, it's like for me that's such a humble quality.
I don't know what it is. And I've seen other actors that have a similar quality that, that they seem generally impressed or happy to be where they're at.
He's just like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm here.
But for some reason, Jimmy Fallon annoys me when he does it.
Oh, really?
I don't know what it is. I just don't like him.
I adore Jimmy Fallon. I think he's so quirky.
Kimmel has the same kind of thing, I think.
No, Kimmel doesn't.
It's just not as annoying to me.
It's not Jimmy Kimmel. No, Jimmy Kimmel is like got that sarcastic asshole bit about him. That's why you like him. Yeah. You flock to the asshole.
It's true. But anyways, now we're talking about Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon. So. I'm always here. No, anyways. So I think that's going to sum up for this episode. Unless you got other thoughts on Jack's back. Anything we missed?
I just want to go back to the whole like fight scene when I don't know how it's funny if you go back and watch it. If you go back to the fight scene and you see Bog and how he jumps,
Right.
it's almost it's very comical, but it looks like he doesn't even reach the bad guy when he jumps. Like, it's like if he would have jumped, or like, like our animals try to jump on the couch and they miss the couch by like just a little bit. I feel like had they not edited that, he wouldn't have landed on the guy. So it was a very far-fetched jump. A lot of times it
looks like they're jumping on a springboard or something to make these leaps.
Yeah, or when they land, the floor is like really smushy.
Well, it was really bad back when Jeffrey landed in Thomas Edison, I want to say. And he landed like on a grassy area, and you could see the spring to it. Oh, God, that's really bad. Yeah. But then keep in mind, this was made to be watched on a 27-inch TV, not a 45 or I'm sorry, 75-inch.
But I'm wondering, TV. I'm wondering if it would be still the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
You wouldn't have noticed it as bad.
You don't think so?
No, like I say, we're watching on a 75-inch TV. I think it's a 75-inch TV. This was made to be watched on a TV half this size, if
like
not
smaller. 22-inch TV or something.
Maybe the largest, maybe in our
with
TV,
like the
TV.
Tubes in the back.
Yeah,
I know, TV I get it.
As far as size wise, but the screen was a lot. Like I say, it was probably something in our bedroom. So
our bedroom is a big screen TV back in those days.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That was a large screen TV back then. So I mean,
remember, you had a remote that had a cord connected to the TV.
No, back then we had regular remotes.
It was a push button though. It wasn't.
It was called, "Hey Aaron, go change the channel."
Yep. Go turn the knob. I was talking to someone about that. Like, man, like we missed like the 3 or 4 channels because like all these other channels, and then you pay for it and you don't even use it. That's
what we gave up on satellite and cable and all that. And we're just doing streaming.
I miss my game show network though. So just to wrap it up, it was an okay episode for me. I feel like there was a lot of things that they cut a lot of corners. I'm wondering if it's because they knew it was over. I don't like the fact that they kept it on a cliffhanger, and I'm really pissed off it's over. And thanks NBC for killing off John Exum.
John Eric Exum.
Yeah.
And I will follow up on that. I enjoyed it a lot more than you did, though. Again, the low budget one, the entire show had that for the most part, but final episode, yeah, it's to be expected. And like you, I am upset that it only lasted 20 episodes. In fact, more so because I've had 40 years to stew on. I've had 40 years to be annoyed by it. Unlike you, only recently came into it, so.
I just feel like...
Because I really enjoyed it when I first watched this. I was right in the demographics.
Right.
I was about the same. We talked about it. I was about 2 months younger or 2 months older than... Mino
Paluse.
I was about 2 months older than him, so I was right in their demographics. And I was annoyed when they didn't get renewed for a second season.
Well, looking at all the other TV shows that don't get renewed, I don't feel like they cut corners as much as this one did at the end.
Are you looking at shows in 2024? Or are you looking at shows in 1983 that the actors themselves, from what I understand, was paying for?
Yeah, but was that like a thing, like a big thing? I mean,
I don't think that's something that normally happens. Normally, the networks will end the show and then the show ends. I think that if I'm not mistaken, this was something that was rare that they wanted to keep it going, so they paid for it themselves to keep it going.
And was it NBC who canceled it?
Yes. My understanding is it was on NBC.
Right.
And they, over on, I want to say CBS or ABC, I get them confused because they, at one time back like in the 80s, they swapped stations. One of them had 60 Minutes. I want to say CBS. They had 60 Minutes, which was a news show, on at the same time as Voyagers. NBC, in their infinite wisdom, wanted to compete with 60 Minutes, so they canceled Voyagers and had a news-type show on instead, which no one remembers the name of. That's how well it worked out for them.
And 60 Minutes is still a thing.
Yes. From what I understand, rumor, story, whatever you want to call it, goes, is they canceled this because they wanted a news-type broadcast that would compete with 60 Minutes. And so John Eric Exum got picked up for Cover Up, and unfortunately,
It was his
accidentally
demise.
shot himself with a prop gun. So, damn you, NBC.
Well,
but yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good episode. There were some nitpicks. I mean, there were,
I think if the acting would have been better, maybe I would have enjoyed it more.
Maybe. I think that, like I said, I think if they would have had a better actress than Julia Duffy, who again was a big name at the time, but
she was like a one-trick pony, though.
Yeah.
I feel like
she didn't have a lot of range.
No, and I don't feel like she, like I said, she was very reactive to her situations in the actual show. And
I don't know how much it was her acting and how much it was the director just didn't get it out of her.
Right.
I'm not sure who to blame. Maybe both.
And so when she like fainted,
or the casting director, or
I never liked that in movies at all with any show where a woman faints like that.
So real quick from IMDb, the director on this was Dean Zentos. The writers on this was credited as James D. Patriot, Sarah Patriot, which I'm assuming is his wife, and Nick Thiel were the writers on this episode. So I guess Nick Thiel was the executive story consultant. So this episode was written by Sarah Patriot and James Patriot, which is the creator of Voyagers, which I think it was nice that the creator wrote the last episode.
Absolutely, because at least he had the voice in the last hand in it.
I guess Sarah, she was a producer on Descendants, which your son likes.
I'm a big fan.
She was a writer on Runaway Bride, 3 Men, a Little Lady. So yeah, I guess she was an executive producer on all 3 Descendants. She has 17 writing credits to her name altogether.
Wow.
The last one being Descendants: The Royal Wedding, a TV special. She wrote the Descendant movies. She did some Desperate Housewives. I guess this was the first thing she wrote, though, was this episode.
Oh, wow.
And she worked on Misfits of Science, a few other things, 3 Men, a Little Lady with Ted Danzig and Danson, whatever, and all them. So yeah, so this was her first writing detail, it looks like. It doesn't say offhand, but yeah, she was born in 1953, so I'm assuming it's James' wife.
Very cool.
So.
And speaking of Mino, I know we've probably mentioned this before, but you know what he went on to be once he was done with the show? A history teacher.
Oh, no, yes.
Which is very fitting, very fitting. It kind of, I wonder if it really, I would love to ask him, like, did it really have that much of a hand in, like, you wanting to be a history teacher? Or, because I've known since I was very little that I always wanted to be a teacher. Like, some of us are just born with it.
He acted on and off until 1985.
Right, and then 2001.
And then with the 2001, but after 1985 is when he retired and he became a history teacher. And again, he had Scarecrow, Mrs. King, Manimal, Silver Spoons, Walter, which was a sequel to MASH, episode of Remington Steel, Punky Brewster we talked about, a few other things here and there. So, yeah, I wonder how much of this show informed his decision to become a history teacher. I guess he teaches history at Hollywood High. So that is an interesting tidbit that, yeah, he did this and this was his biggest thing. I mean, he did bit parts after this. And before this, he was in a couple episodes. He was in Best of the West. Oh, I guess he was in 22 episodes of Best of the West, some TV series.
Probably paid for his college.
That was his first thing, was Best of the West.
Oh, here's a kind of a cool trivia thing. When they canceled Voyagers,
Ooh.
there was a funny skit on David Letterman's show called They Took My Show Away, where Dave helps a kid overcome his disappointment. Do you remember that? Have you seen it?
No, but I've read about that since then. Yeah, I did read about that since then. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Well, unless you have anything else.
I'm looking. A precursor to Back to the Future, where an older man befriends a boy who uses a device to travel through time together to fix mistakes in time-space continuum. That's kind of funny.
Yep.
No, I think we've kind of wrapped it up. Was short, sweet. These episodes probably like 20 minutes long or whatever, but...
Oh, I mean, we can cut out the spaces and some... But right now, we're just about an hour.
Yeah, but it won't take that long.
Probably half an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe 40 minutes when I get done editing and...
Adding all the little...
Pulling out spaces and everything.
Right.
Like I said, we got at least one more episode planned. Probably one more episode. We'll talk about Voyagers, the Unknown, and our final thoughts of the series. I'm going to see if I can get Lee back on here for that, if we can plan this ahead of time. We need to make plans with Lee, if we can. Sometime in the next month so I can release this. But unless you have any final thoughts, Michelle, I guess we can end this here.
So if you want to learn more about the Voyagers, you can take a voyage down to an app called iTunes and learn more.
You can also take a trip down to your local Facebook and check out the Voyagers Guidebook. It's a great Facebook group that I'm on that talks about the Voyagers, and great people on there. Not a lot of activity because, again, this is a 40-year-old show, but they do have some postings on there, and they have some updates on Mino. And
I got to say one last thing. I know at the beginning of the show, I moaned and groaned about this, and I hated it with every ounce of my well-being.
A passion of 1,000 burning suns.
But I will say this. You never know you're going to miss it until it's gone. And the fact that in the last episode of the season, or the whole shebang, not one bat's breath was ever mentioned.
Bat's breath?
I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Bat's breath.
And I don't know, maybe they got complaints from viewers at the time. Maybe people complained about that. And maybe that's why they stopped it.
We have a lot of questions. We're going to have to go through and listen to some of these and jot down our questions so we can ask the writer when we finally get to talk to him.
I'm working on that, but I got a restraining order against me now. Oh.
Yeah. It's not your first. It won't be your last.
Amen. Well, let me pull up my Omni. Oh, damn, it's red.
I'd say where we're going next, but...
We know. Voyagers of the Unknown. Bat's breath.
Bat's breath.
If you want to learn more about the Wright brothers, Eddie Rickenbacker, and the early days of flying, take a voyage to your nearest public library. It's all in books.
Thank you for listening. This has been VoyagersCast, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. All copyrights belong to respective owners, and no copyright infringement is intended or implied. We're just a huge fan of time travel shows, and Voyagers in particular. Be sure to join us monthly as we watch where Phineas and Jeffrey land next. And if you enjoy this show, check out the other shows on the Headcast Network. The first week of the month, we have Head Speaks and the Starbright Project. Head Speaks is where I talk about comic books, TVs, movies, books, anything geeky. The Starbright Project is where Michelle and I look at another great time travel series, Quantum Leap, and then we'll talk about it. The second week of the month brings you G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, and this show, VoyagersCast. Over on my G.I. Joe show, we look at the G.I. Joe comics and cartoons from the late 80s. The third week of the month, we drop both Task Force X and Retrospect to the 80s. Task Force X is a show that looks at the Suicide Squad and Checkmate books from the late 80s. Retrospect to the 80s, surprisingly enough, is a show where Michelle and I, and possibly some guests, look back at what we think is the greatest decade there was, the 80s. Finally, the fourth week of the month, I release the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour and Bravo Team. Starman Manhunter is a show where I look at the Will Payton Starman and the Mark Shaw Manhunter books, both from the late 80s. Yes, I have a time period. Bravo Team is my sister show to the G.I. Joe team, or maybe brother show, where we look at anything else G.I. Joe related. We'll be back next month to join our friends Phineas and Jeffrey as they leap into, well, the unknown. Until then, remember, may your landings always be soft
and your lights always be green.